Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to the Betweenlands Spotlight tutorial series. This is actually an episode that I've been waiting to do. I've been really excited to do it, covering a new update for the Betweenlands with some features that I have been highly anticipating. First up, of course, the Spook Event is currently going on because it is, well, right now it's just about Halloween, right? So the Spook Event is going on, and so some textures are changed, of course. You'll see a lot more Halloween colors. You know, we talked about the Spook Event, you know, in a prior episode. But there was a new update that was just released, and a little bit ago I've been testing around, playing around with some of the features, and it is kind of a Halloween-themed update with some really exciting stuff added in. First up, worth noting, during the Spook Event, and this is only true during the Spook Event, but they added now that sludges will have jack-o'-lantern faces during the Spook Event. Of course, this will be gone. I can't remember exactly how long the Spook Event runs, but it will be gone here pretty soon. So that's only during this event. Now, that being said, everything else that we're going to be talking about today is true after the Spook Event and onwards. So first up, there is a few changed textures. They're kind of working on some texture overhauls, some texture revamps, and so you will see some slightly altered textures from, you know, after this update and onwards. One of the ones that really stuck out to me was Sulfur is changed a little bit. Where it used to have a lot darker lines kind of around the Sulfur, that's now gone, and it's just kind of bits of that yellow kind of sticking through the between stone. I'm not going to go over all the new textures, but that's one that personally stood out a lot to me, was the change to the Sulfur ore. Now, moving on, there's a lot of changes and updates to some of the mobs. There's also a couple new mobs that we're going to talk about. First up, if we turn on the Blood Sky event, now during Blood Sky events, Sporlings will spawn with Splodeshrooms on their heads. So, of course, if you go over near these, they are going to explode, boom, and cause the effect there. So just a heads up on that. After they explode, of course, they're just peaceful little Sporlings, but they will spawn with those Splodeshrooms on their heads, which you can cut down like so. Yeah, you could see them spawning naturally here on this shelf fungus with those Splodeshrooms. From what I've seen during a Blood Sky event, it's going to be about 100% chance that they're going to have those Splodeshrooms on their head, so just a heads up. Now, next up, another new mob kind of update. Of course, as you know, there's tar beasts. They're super nasty, super dangerous, and they just got a little bit worse, right? Normally, tar beasts are somewhat uncommon, but now there is a new feature where if a wight falls into tar, it's kind of cool. I can see through the tar. But if a wight falls into tar now, and we give him a second, he becomes a tar beast. He comes back up out of the tar as a tar beast. So you're probably going to most likely see more tar beasts now, because if a wight, which are pretty common mobs, if a wight now falls into tar, it's going to become a tar beast. But this does create a very farmable way to farm tar beast. You know, to create tar minions or to use that tar for other purposes, because of course it is a very useful material. In that, you can set up a little area near a wight spawner, and then put tar around it and have the wights become tar based and kill them off. Of course, you can find tar based spawners underground, but they tend to be pretty uncommon, so this does create a very easy way for you to farm tar based early on. So if they do change over to a tar base, they do still drop all the tar base drops, so no worries there. But next up, if you recall the Baroshi, which is kind of the mini-boss that spawns inside the Sludgeon dungeon about midway down, the Baroshi was given its very own kind of theme music, and it is amazing. So I'm going to put it down. We'll let you listen to it for a minute. It's a really cool track. Sadly, there is no disc, hint hint, there is no music disc for this at the moment, and I'm really hoping that it does get added, because it is really good music track. So, like I said, really cool music track that was added to the Baroshi. Really, really excited about that, and it has also given me a reason to go into Tales. I haven't done it just yet, but I'm going to. I'm going to go into Tales and make this spawn egg craftable. You know, a little bit later in the game, so you could set it up at your base and have that music track playing, you know, in a given area constantly. So, personally, I really, really love that music. It's probably my favorite, and I love the Betweenlands music, and it is my personal favorite. I think it's amazing. Alright, so moving on. Another change that was added, another kind of mob addition that was added, and this thing is horrendous. It is terrible. Occasionally, and I believe Triple-Headed Sheep told me the chance is 1 out of 20. Though I tend to have really bad luck in all things, I find. So earlier I had to spawn about 40 of them. At first I was thinking like, man, I don't think they're going to spawn out of spawn eggs, but they do eventually spawn from spawn eggs. It just takes a little bit. There we go. You will see that occasionally when a peat mummy spawns, and bear in mind, I mean, peat mummies are pretty rare already, so it's not going to be something that you come across too commonly. But occasionally whenever a peat mummy spawns, it will spawn with a swamp hag on its back as kind of a rider. You can kill the swamp hag independently of the peat mummy. Yeah, you're going to notice that swamp hag throws, oh gosh, it throws worms at you, right? So if you're running from it, normally you can kind of cheese them when it comes to water, but these swamp hags are going to make it a lot harder, right? If you do come across them, because they will be, it kind of gives the peat mummy in a way a ranged attack occasionally whenever they spawn with those riders. So, yeah. And it's going to drop those worms onto the ground, as you see. I've just got a peat mummy army here. But kind of a neat little added feature. Like I said, you may be going for a while before you run into those, because peat mummies aren't that common, and they, on top of that, there's not a really high chance that they're going to spawn with those riders. But it is something to be aware of, and if you kill the peat mummy that the hag is riding, it will drop to the ground, and then you'll have to contend with that swamp hag. But as long as it's on the back of the peat mummy, it's going to be chucking worms at you, which I think is pretty neat. And just the animation and everything is really, really cool, because, you know, it's taking those worms, it's throwing them, and then it's creating those worms on the ground that you're going to have to deal with, which are small amounts of damage. I mean, the swamp hag doesn't do a ton of damage if you're armored out, but it adds to kind of that danger of dealing with a peat mummy. Now, next up, let's go underground for this next bit, and we have a few things to cover, but the very first thing I want to talk about is the cave ambience. Had some TLC added to it, which I'm going to turn off the blood sky because it plays a bit of sound even down here. But if we go down into the caves and we kind of just go around for a little bit, you're going to notice a lot more ambience than before. The ambience was already really good, and they've basically one-upped themselves on the ambience, I think. So as you can see, it's a bit better, I think. There's a lot more like kind of sound effects and a lot more of a creep factor when you're traveling through these caves, I think. There's a lot more kind of, ooh, what was that kind of sounds, I find, when I'm wandering around down here. So next up, we get to start talking about some of the new things that were added with this update. Just brand new, completely new things. One of them is the Infestation. Now this mob is really cool. it will spawn. Right now, I find that it's spawning a lot, and I know it was brought up on the Discord, and the spawn chance is planned to get kind of decreased. But at the moment, you're going to be running across these a fair amount. Personally, I don't mind it, but I know some people don't like it. Actually, here's one spawning naturally. These are the infestations. And when you get near them, they're just these creepy, crawly bugs, and your screen's going to get covered up in bugs. I know some people aren't going to be a fan of that. Personally, I love it. I think it's really, really cool. And both the mobs that were added with this update, I have big plans for in Tails. It's going to be great. I have a lot of uses for them. And anyways, when you get near these, this is their form of attack. If I wasn't in survival mode, I would be taking damage. It's not a ton of damage, but I am going to be taking damage whenever whenever I start getting covered up with bugs. Now, there's a couple ways that you can deal with these. First off, if you just start swinging, it's going to start knocking some of them off. I do find, like, the sword works, but I find that I like the fists a bit more, personally, as far as dealing with them, because of the fact that I can attack faster, because you'll notice, I mean, it's not really doing anything, but with the fists, I can attack a little bit faster, and generally I find that I can knock them off a little bit better than with the sword. But that being said, if you're trying to damage these, it's probably better that you keep the sword out and kind of stay at a distance, because the closer that you get to this, the faster that your screen's going to fill up, and in turn, the more damage that you're going to take. Now, another way that you can deal with these is just by jumping. You can jump and try to get them off. So if you're jumping and you're swinging your fists around, of course I'm breaking all the blocks, but you're going to get them off at a pretty decent rate. Now, one other way that you can get them off is if you go find, just some swamp water. These gnawing, biting little bugs. If we jump into water, you're going to notice nothing happens. However, if we jump into water that we can submerge in, you'll notice they all just fall off. They do not like water, and of course this water doesn't work because they're kind of on your head and everything. That's where they're biting. So you're going to have to completely submerge yourself, but it's a good way to kind of deal with these mobs. Another thing that you can do, if you carry around a bucket of swamp water and you get these bugs on you, what you can do is then just kind of take a bath, throw it up, kind of up in the air, and it's going to wash you off. One thing I do think that would be cool is if fire would cause, like if you jump into fire, it would cause them to get off of you too, because it does kind of make sense. But right now, water and just jumping and swinging your hands, kind of flailing around, is going to get those bugs off of you. And of course you can kill them, but one thing to note is whenever you kill them, you'll find that they break off into like smaller little groups sometimes, so you can see that they have spread. There's another infestation. They've kind of spread out and just basically came back to life. They're kind of a pain to deal with sometimes. You will eventually kill them off, but just bear in mind that they are going to kind of split and make little like new colonies, if you will. Just a heads up there. Now, the next mob that we need to talk about is the Stalker. Now, this thing is rare. This thing, if you go down here looking for it, it's going to be about like looking for Bigfoot, right? It's not a common spawn, and in addition, even if it was spawning, you probably would not know it initially. So the Stalker has been a mob that has been tased. If you recall, there has been Stalker eyes in the Betweenlands for a very long time, but they don't drop from anything, right? The Stalker is the answer to that. However, at the moment, I have not noticed Stalker eyes dropping. I don't know if it's intended that they drop, but it's just not dropping in my experience whenever I kill them. But occasionally, you will say this thing. And this thing has been teased a bit. Just the animation and stuff has been teased a lot in the Moss Lounge for a while. But the actual skin, I don't believe I've ever seen it. Okay, when I saw the animation, kind of in like the work in progress, it was a peat mummy that was moving around, and this thing is absolutely creepy, right? The way it just walks across walls and ceilings and stuff like that, and its head shakes and it blinks. It's very, very creepy, and it kind of has this like one of those like triform mouths, right? That just kind of like move. It's a really creeping thing, and in addition, its combat AI is amazing. Okay, so for example, we go into survival mode, it's going to run. it's going to go hide. But the thing is, it's going to stalk us, as its name implies. And you'll see it every once in a while. It'll move kind of in the corner of your vision is where it's going to move around. But if we turn our back to it for a minute and we start fighting some of these swamp hags and things, it's not going to do anything whenever it's by itself. It's going to wait for you to kind of get engaged with mobs. And when I find whenever your health starts getting low too, infestations are just, they're so nasty. They really are. But let's go ahead and spawn a new Stalker here. You're going to see he's going to go try to find himself a place to hide. Looks like he got a little bit stuck there. But if we start getting into combat with some things... Oh gosh. There's a white somewhere around in here. Yeah, you can see him kind of, every once in a while you can see him kind of watching to see what's going on from kind of the corner up there. Oh gosh. Infestations are so nasty, right? And just the fact that you don't necessarily kill them when you think you've killed them. I imagine we're going to see him. I got him to kind of come out. Yep, there we go. You can see that he just jumps down, right? And I died, of course. He's only really going to attack you, I find, whenever your health starts to get low and when you're fighting something else. Okay? So, you kind of want to watch your back when you're exploring, because this guy will creep and follow you for a very long time. Like, he's not going to engage you until he's ready. And once he's ready, there's a pretty good chance you're going to die. Now, luckily, earlier I fought one, and I actually managed to kill him. I was fighting a boulder, and he came in after the boulder hit me real hard, right? Like, I turned my back to fight a swamp hag. Boulder came rolling in, hit me in the back, hit me for a lot of damage. And that's when the Stalker decides to attack me. So what happens is the Stalker will do this, like, he'll jump down and do this, like, I don't know if it's like a gaze, but he screams kind of like a peat mummy, right? And whenever he does that, you're going to freeze in place. So, you've got about, it lasts for a couple seconds that you're frozen in place, but of course, due to the fact that he only attacks when you're fighting something, and he tends to try to get behind you. So if I turn my back here, oh, there went one. There it is. See, he jumps down. I can't move. I have like super slowness. I'm pretty much stuck in place. So chances are you've probably got about 3 or 4 hearts. That being said, he doesn't hit for a lot. Like on his own, he does not hit for a whole lot. I don't know if I can get him to go into combat if I... He's super fast. So, I mean, there's no... There we go. You can see, I mean, he barely hits for anything. His biggest thing is whenever he does that stun, and especially if you're in combat, there's a pretty good chance that it will kill you. Because whatever mob that you're fighting is probably a whole lot stronger than him. And then given his, like, you know, heart or 2 damage, depending on the armor that you're wearing, it does add up pretty quick, and he is extremely deadly due to that. But the best part is he just creeps around and follows you while you're down in the caves. And it just adds a whole nother layer of, like, creep factor to the Betweenlands, right? Just having this thing that just literally stalks you around and then jumps you when you're low on health. I absolutely love it. I love the custom AI because it's not like, you know, most mobs where they're like, okay, I'm just going to attack you and I'm going to run into you or do like a ranged attack. This guy has his own completely custom AI and I love it. I absolutely love it. So really cool stuff, and I love the custom animation. I'm really hoping that we see some kind of like spiders, big, large spiders that use that, because that would just be so creeping. So creeping. Like a spider boss and like a spider den, I think would be awesome in the Betweenlands. But maybe that's just me. I don't know, spiders are so creepy and I love it. Anyways, moving on to the last thing that we have to cover today, and that is simulacrums. I am going to say there's a fair few effects with the simulacrum. I'm going to put a spoiler in. Personally, I find it best that you kind of experiment with the simulacrums a little bit. And I'm not going to be showing off all the effects, what they do. I'm still learning because some of the effects are really obscure, and figuring out how to proc them and what exactly they do has been a lot of fun. I know Triple-Headed Sheep told me if I have any questions, let him know. But I'm having a lot of fun finding out myself what these things do because there is a lot of effects. So, for example, if we pop down, you're going to notice these things. These will spawn in the world. There's a few different types of them. There's Deep Man Similacrums, which I find tend to spawn in the cavern layer. Where there's all the between stone, you're going to find these. And they will a lot of times have some kind of ornamental decor around them. I haven't noticed any correlation between their decor and what they do, personally. This one, for example, is a no effect simulacrum. But sometimes they will spawn with little bits of decor. So this is a Deep Man Simulacrum. There is also Lake Caverns, and there's 3 different variations of each one. So for example, and they make really cool decor for sure. But for example, there's that one, there's that one, and there's that one, and that is the Deep Man Simulacrums. Now there is also the Lake Cavern Simulacrums. These spawn down in the cavern layers. And then there is also the Root Man Simulacrums, which I actually love the way these look, and these I have found spawn above ground. Okay, so you have 3 different types, and 2 of which are going to be underground at varying heights. And then the Root Man ones spawn above ground. Absolutely love these. I do plan on making these craftable in tails because they're just so cool. Of course, I'm going to make them with no effect. So whenever you craft them, you're not going to get an effect on them because that would be a little bit OP. But they're kind of like a collectible item that you can find as you explore the Betweenlands. And in addition, they are going to have varying effects, most of which are bad. I'll go ahead and tell you, most of the effects are bad. But a lot of times, it takes a lot of trial and error and testing to figure out exactly what they do. And that's where I've had so much fun. And it's easier in creative mode than it is in survival mode, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. But I want to show you a few that I have found here. Like, for example, there's one that has spawned, and it has spawned with an offering plate or an offering table. This is a new block. I have not noticed any correlation to the offering table and the simulacrums. The offering table is just something that you can put an item on, and it'll display it. Unfortunately, by default, these are not craftable, though I do plan on making them craftable within tails, but they can be rarely found while exploring. So you can come across them, but I tend to like making things craftable personally, just so that if I want to have these, because I don't know, like I'm just imagining building a room with lots of these little people sitting at tables with food, or something like that. I think it's really, really cool. And these things, I think, are just beautiful decor. Betweenlands tends to be that way. Betweenlands, basically, I know everyone thinks it's a dimension mod, but it's actually a decor mod. But yeah, so sometimes you'll come across these. This one spawned with a forbidden fig on it, and there is a simulacrum here. And if we take a look, it is a sanctuary effect on this one. And then lastly, over here is one that has spawned down in the lake cavern. As you notice, I mean, they can be kind of hard to spot. I will say if you have a scanner, you can scan for them, but of course bear in mind that there are 3 different types for each type, and the scanner is only going to pick up one of those, and of course that's from the scannable mod, so if you don't have access to that, then you're out of luck there too. So I just use it for these because it makes finding things for the videos a little bit quicker. And then, of course, like I said, there is the Root Man one, which I had found a couple, but I forgot to put waypoints up for those. But they're just going to spawn above ground. Those will probably be the first ones that you come across. I actually loaded into the world and found one pretty close to where I spawned in at. That being said, though, they do tend to be a little bit rare. It may take a bit of searching, but you will naturally come across these. They're not crazy rare. Now, they do have effects. I'm going to show off a couple effects, but I am going to say this is kind of a spoiler alert, because I will say that I personally had a lot of fun figuring out what the effects do on my own. So this will be the last thing that we cover in this video, so if you don't want to know about the effects and how to proc them and what they do, or not necessarily how to proc them, but what they do, what they affect, you can end the video here. But if you want to see a couple of the effects, I'm not going to show all of them. Like I said, for one, I haven't figured out all of them myself, and I'm honestly having a lot of fun figuring them out myself. But if you want to know about a couple of the effects and what they do, I will be showing those off. But if you don't want to know, I would suggest that you stop the video here. So that being said, if we place down one of these, now this is only in creative mode. You can see that in creative mode, I can see that the effect on this one is Fertility. I can see that the effect on this one is a Wisp. Now, if I go into survival mode, you're going to notice that I don't see the effects whatsoever. If you're in survival mode, you pick these up, you're not going to know if it's a Fertility effect, or if it's a Sanctuary effect, or if it's a Wisp effect, until you actually go out and you test them out. And like I said, figuring out exactly what all of them does has been a lot of testing just to figure out a few of them, and there's quite a few effects, right? Another really neat thing, if you want to test it out and just figure things out and have some fun with it, if you go into creative mode and you put down a simulacrum, you hit shift and right click, you can actually toggle through the various effects that it has. So the effects that simulacrums currently have, there is the none effect, which I'm sure does nothing. It's just a decorative simulacrum, and I think that's kind of cool because that's tossed in there, because you may come across a simulacrum in survival and be testing it and trying to figure out what it does, and when in fact it does nothing, right? I think that's really, really cool. Now there's also the random effect, which it does seem to randomize between the other effects, so it can proc a lot of different things. There is also the them effect. There is imitation. There is weakness. There is resurrection, sanctuary, fertility, attraction, wisp, and wisdom, and blessing. Yeah. And so there's quite a few different effects and things that your simulacrum could be, but actually figuring out what they are is a lot of work. Wisdom, if you get near it, it will spew experience. Okay. Now this one will proc, and then there seems to be, I think, a really long cooldown period on it. So kind of a minor effect there. It doesn't spew a whole lot of XP. It's like, a couple levels. It's not much. Also, one really nice thing to note is that if you break and replace it, it's not going to give you more XP. So just a heads up, it's not going to just keep procking XP for you. Next up, let's talk about the fertility one. So if you put this down, and okay, so this was an area where I was kind of testing some of these out, and for example, if we put down a fertility simulacrum here, you'll notice that it starts spawning mire snails. I'm guessing now, like this was the first place that I tested it, but I'm guessing now that there's something about this area that causes it to spawn mire snails. Because when I tested it out there, it wasn't doing anything. But here, it's like, it seems to work perfectly. And what's really, really cool is you can kill these off, and it's just going to spawn more. And if I come out over here, put that down, yeah, it's spawning mire snails here too. So fertility, from what I can tell, creates mire snails. But this is a raised isles biome, so it's possible that maybe it's biome specific in what it does. Nope, it just created mire snails there. And every time that it's spawned them for me, it's always been mire snails, and I have killed a lot of these off. So I don't know if there's maybe a small chance that it'll create blood snails. But in my experience, after spawning probably 30 or 40, because I was like, oh wow, this really does this. It always spawned mire snails. So a really easy way to farm mire snails for meat and for shells and things like that. you can pretty much have, I guess, kind of an infinite little source of mire snails this way. And it seems like after they go so far away, it will spawn a new one pretty quickly to kind of take its place. And then if you have multiples of these, they do seem to spawn multiple mire snails. It doesn't take any input from you, it just does its thing. So if you get lucky enough to find one of these, it is super handy. Another one that I found, this one's good, but also kind of bad in a way. Let's set this to resurrection. Okay, at first I thought, well, maybe it resurrects you if you die. No. What it does is it resurrects mobs that died near it. I died near it, it did nothing. So if I kill that swamp hag, we give it a second, it resurrects the swamp hag with half health. Okay? But what's nifty about this, and what makes it pretty useful, I think, is the fact that it will still drop the items. Now you'll notice that time it did not resurrect the swamp hag. I find that it seems to be based off a chance thing. I've had a swamp hag re-resurrect as many as 3 times, but I've also had it not resurrect, as it seems to be right there. So it seems like there's maybe a proc chance whenever a mob dies near it that it's going to resurrect the mob, and then there's a chance that it's not going to. But like I said, I have found that resurrected mobs can still be re-resurrected again, if luck is on their side, I guess. So kind of useful in the fact that it does drop the items a second time, possibly a third time. So if you are having to spawn kind of expensive mobs, or something that you're farming, like out in the world farming. So for example, if you're running around looking for whites, take this if you know that this Similacrum is resurrection, just take it with you, drop it during the fight, kill the white. He's going to resurrect at only half health and drop his items again. So could be, I think it's meant to be a curse, but I think it can also be a blessing if you use it properly. The imitation one, from what I've seen, it will do a mob sound effect. Why are you still carrying on? But imitation just seems to be kind of a random mob effect, or mob sound. And it will, from what I've seen, it will do it randomly. So having it set up at your base is just kind of, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's just kind of more of an ambience thing, so you can have kind of mob sounds activating occasionally. So I haven't personally found a way to influence, but like I said, Similacrums are new. I'm still playing around with them and still having a lot of fun figuring out what all they do. So, but there is still a lot of effects that I've been playing around with, like Blessing and Sanctuary. Them, I thought had maybe something to do with them that spawned during the events, but it doesn't seem to. And I haven't noticed it spawning any, outside that event or anything, like having any that I can see. Also the Wisp effect, I thought would have something to do with these Wisps. I played around with it for a while, but couldn't find anything that it didn't seem to spawn Wisp, and it didn't seem to keep them visible in an area. So I'm still kind of playing around with that one. But they're really cool effects there, and honestly I find that they're a lot of fun to just play around and figure out. So if you guys want kind of a detailed, here's what all the Simulacrum effects do, a little bit down the road, I can do that if you guys want. But right now, I'm just having a whole lot of fun figuring out what they do. I've been playing around with them and stuff. And that's not even to mention that in survival mode, you won't even know what the actual name of the effect is. You're going to have to find out through trial and error, and it may end up being nothing. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the update. I've been having a blast on here. I've been messing around with it for probably about 7 or 8 hours now. Having a lot of fun, but I wanted to get this video out for you guys to kind of update you guys and let you know what to expect to find in the update, and keep you guys updated on the Betweenlands, because like I said, it's probably my favorite mod in history. It's not even it is my favorite mod. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out, and I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.